Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool, and about 2 weeks ago Tekton announced that they were releasing some extra shallow socket sets. Well, both sets and individual, metric and SAE. Now what's interesting is the individual side, and that's because I went through basically my overlanding needs for one primary vehicle and thought, okay, I'm going to get some of these shallows specifically for certain things, but that's all. Now you can buy them in sets. There's an SAE set you can get. It's an 11-piece set from 3/8 to 1 inch, and that sells for $42. You can also get some individuals to supplement that. There are 4 others that aren't included in the set that also Tekton makes, and those are 1/4 inch 9/32, 5/16, and 11/32. And on the metric side, for $60, you can get a no-skip set from 8mm to 24mm. Now there are also a 6 and a 7mm available for sale as well, but they aren't part of that set. So for $60 you get a bunch more. That's a 17-piece set. And I thought, I don't want a 17-piece. And as I looked through that, there were a bunch of them I don't know if I'd ever use. You know, say me personally, you know, the 16, the 18. But anyway, I decided I would just pick some up. Tekton's got a $25 minimum for free shipping. Well, how much are these individually? On the metric side, anything basically from 8 to 18 is they're $5 a piece. And then 19 through 24 are $6 a piece. So I had, you know, here's 5, 10, 15, 20, 26. There's $26. Here they are. On the SAE side, anything basically from 1/4 inch through 11/16 are $5, and then 3/4 of an inch up to a full inch are $6. So they're quite reasonably priced. But when you think about what you're actually going to use, being able to buy them individually is pretty sweet, because it is sort of a specialty socket. There are a lot of places that this doesn't work, but there are a lot of places where it's essential. And it got me wondering why the standard sized socket is the size that it is. What was behind that? You know, you probably have to go way back to, you know, probably the beginning of sockets, and then what was going on that caused us to create a socket this size and call that the standard size. And then later it became the shallow size because we came up with a deep. So you wouldn't have a standard and a deep, you might have a shallow and a deep. And then of course there was the semi-deep. I don't know why they didn't call it semi-shallow. Maybe it didn't sound as good. And then of course we go to the extra deep and then the extra shallow. Kind of interesting. And I actually had to use this one the other day. I was replacing some of the gas struts on a hatchback, and the only thing I could get in there, I needed a 10, actually I needed a 12mm, and the only thing I could get in around this kind of bent angled attachment point was an extension on a shallow socket. The extension allowed the ratchet to be far enough away that I could actually turn it, but it also shrunk this down a little, so this fit over the nut. Actually, it was a bolt, over the bolt, and then the extension was thin enough to fit around the bracket. So it kind of got me thinking about some other tool ideas. But anyway, and I've done other videos on shallows recently. Ulsa's got a whole set, but not individuals. And then big ones, small ones. It's kind of interesting. But I went through basically the bolt layout, or the fastener layout of a Toyota Tacoma. And I ended up thinking, okay, what might actually work? Obviously a 10. 10s are great. But a 12. 12 is actually used quite often. A 14. 14 is probably more than 12 even. 17 is pretty common. And then there are a couple of places, drain plugs, that use a 24 where this should work just fine. And I thought, that's all I need. I don't need, if I've got other stuff that I'd have with me, you know, even smaller, going down to 6mm, actually 5mm. But for shallows, there you go. That's all I needed. That's all I wanted. That's all I bought. Now, I went back to the Tekton site and started reading a little bit more about it. Apparently, the 10 millimeter size is proof torqued to up to 100 Newton meters, and 17 and above, here's a 17 right here, is 300 Newton meters. So that's pretty strong for a little tiny socket like that. The other thing is that you couldn't get all of them anymore. Looks like a bunch of them sold out, so I really hope Tekton makes them available, because I think it's a great idea to be able to look at this and, you know, or look at your use case and say, I don't need the whole set. I don't need 17, or actually 19 if you've got the 6 and the 7, which is something I would have to do if I was going to do it. You know, get the whole set. You might as well get the whole set. But in reality, these are the only ones that I probably ever can use in the situation that I would be carrying them. I have other sockets, obviously, other shallows, etc. But I just want to leave these in a kit, and that's why I chose those very specific ones. The other thing is, if this fits nicely, I haven't tried it yet, on the locations where I could use it, then that'll get rid of carrying something even bigger. And obviously the drain plug stuff is a lower torque, and that's one of the problems. They should put like an 8 millimeter drain plug of some, or at least the bolt end of it, because people always over torque these because they're using a great big tool. And I've made videos about the idea of using really big stuff, long handles, etc., but only torquing it a little bit, being real kind of fine, applying that finesse with a larger tool. Unfortunately, most people just crank down on it, and they don't realize, that there's a massive difference in the amount of force just with a small increase in the length of the handle. So anyway, thought I'd point those out. I hope Tekton brings them back, or if you are interested in a particular set of them, you might jump online. I'll put a link to their site. But again, they've only been out 2 weeks, and quite a few of them have been picked up, it looks like. Anyway, let me know what you think, if you've done anything like this. And with that, Doc out.